Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Let me welcome everyone to the broadcast today. You guys, let me know you guys are out there. Welcome to episode 3 of Unfiltered. Welcome to the conversation. Guys, like and share, like and share. We are super excited to have each and every one of us joining you here on today. Listen. If you guys are on YouTube, please subscribe and like the channel. And here's why. I'm learning as we go. This helps the algorithm so that more people will actually tune in and see the broadcast later. I was so excited last week to see how many of you sent people to see the replay. It was amazing. Hundreds of people saw it and the numbers are still growing. Welcome, Deborah. Welcome, Shanita. Welcome, Freedom by Design, Avril, Christina, Tish, I see you guys all out there. Welcome, Jackie. Guys, welcome, like and share. It's an important episode that we're going to have today. So listen, for those of you who are having trouble participating in the live chat, I've been getting these messages from people. We want to participate in the giveaway. We want to talk on the chat. For those of you who are having trouble, we want everyone to join the conversation. So here's a little technical tip for today. Make sure that you're signed in to your chosen viewing platform so that your chat is enabled. So if you're on YouTube, you have to make sure you're signed in and you see your picture in the upper right-hand corner, and then you'll be able to chat with us because we would love to have you guys join the conversation. So guys, today is March 24th. So you know exactly what that means, guys. Yes. It is National Philadelphia Cheesesteak Day. Okay, like nobody knew what that meant. I didn't know what it meant. But now we all know that March 24th is National Cheesesteak Day. So here's the deal. Unfiltered is honored to support and promote small businesses. So big shout out to Trenton Dior Smith, who operate this truck called A Little Taste of Philly. That food truck was actually part of the Freedom by Design event for Frank that was held on Sunday. That truck is right here in Georgia. You guys follow them on Instagram and Facebook. You can find them at A Little Taste of Philly. So you guys go ahead and make sure you guys are following them. But here's a preview, guys. I wanted to show you guys this of what to expect when you decide to support this small business. So apparently they did this video where this person was taking their very first bite. And there's just something about that first bite. So I want to share this with you guys so you know what to expect.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Okay. So you guys, let's make sure we support our small businesses here on National Philly Cheesesteak Day. That was some first impression. I got to tell you, keeping it real, they also have this salmon and spinach cheesesteak Philly. That is the truth. I'm sure some of our guests who've been to their truck can kind of speak to that. It is absolutely unreal. But guys, it is March. And we are still celebrating women in history. So guys, fun fact, this week in 1972, the Equal Rights Amendment, which you guys know provided, legal equality, even though, technically it's not really equal yet, but legally it's supposed to be equal for the sexes and it's supposed to prohibit discrimination on the basis of sex. Guys, that was passed by the US Senate and sent to the states for ratification in 1972 of This Week in History. So that's a fun fact. So today we are actually honoring Aretha Franklin for our Woman of the Month as we celebrate Women's Month in March. Guys, Aretha Franklin, her birthday is tomorrow. So that would have been her birthday, March 25th. She is not only the Queen of Soul, but guys, she's an advocate for change and an overcomer. I'm not sure if a lot of us knew this, but Aretha Franklin was actually immersed in social change. She was immersed in civil rights. She was immersed in women's rights. I was actually reading an article where Jesse Jackson was talking about the fact that when they would do these trips or have to go, do sit-ins and things like that, she would actually sometimes pay the payroll because they didn't have enough money for it. And she would perform at these different concerts and benefits in support of the civil rights movement and protest. So that's an amazing fact about her. But here's the interesting part about it, guys. For all of her impact and all of her success throughout her history, different outlets would also write about the fact that she had some bouts with alcoholism and that she had some bouts with depression. In 2018, the Telegraph of the UK actually published an article that was titled "Depression as Deep as the Sea," in reference to their conversation with her. It doesn't matter what your economic status is. It doesn't matter if you're famous, if you're rich, if you're poor, if you're Black or you're white, or any other title you identify yourself by, guys. Depression is a significant part of the mental health crisis that we're facing today. Those who don't believe that we're in a mental health crisis, all you need to do is turn on the news. National Public Radio reported that they have rather called it a massive one-year rise in homicide rates that collided with the pandemic. But there's also been a rise in mass shootings. I want us to take a look at some of those statistics in light of what happened recently here in Atlanta with the spas and also in Colorado recently with the grocery store. Let's take a look at this. The mass shooting incidents from 2014 to 2020, you will notice the huge spike that happened here in 2020. The same thing goes for homicide. So if we look at the homicide charts right there, what you're going to see there is 2020 saw an unprecedented spike in homicide, in murder in the major US cities. Guys, Seattle saw a 74% increase in 2020 during this pandemic. New Orleans, 61%. Atlanta, 51%. Guys, these numbers are astonishing. And these are things that are happening behind the scenes that we have to pay attention to, because in those numbers, we also have to talk about suicide, guys. Suicide also saw an increase. And here's the deal. The people who are struggling the most are young people. The CDC says that the group between 18 and 24, 74.9% of them are struggling with at least one mental health crisis, and 50% of people between the ages of 25 and 44. In fact, according to the Centers for Disease and Control and Prevention, here's what they said. Suicide is one of the leading causes of death in the United States of America. In fact, it's the 10th leading cause. Here's another thing that I found astounding, and which is why we have to have this talk today. There were more than 2.5 times as many suicides in the United States in 2018 as there were homicides. I'm not an expert in this area by any means, but it would seem that homicide and suicide are fruit of the same tree. One is an outward expression, the other is an inward expression. So when reading the proposed reasons behind this increase in suicide and the increase in homicide, there seem to be overlapping reasons. So we have to ask ourselves, do we have coworkers or family members or friends who are at risk? Guys, it's time for us to talk. Today's guest has a bachelor's in psychology, a master's in mental health counseling, and a doctorate in advanced counseling studies. She has over a decade of experience in counseling, so I'm grateful that she decided to join us today. And she currently works with homicidal and suicidal members of our society who are seeking crisis intervention. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. Cherie Gardner to the show with us today. Doctor, are you with us?
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Oh, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. So before we dive in, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Cherie Gardner. As Bernadette explained, I have over 10 years of mental health counseling, and that's from a range of different arenas, from child and adolescence to HIV prevention and care and treatment, to now currently suicide and homicidal prevention care. Family and couples marriage therapy, I have that. But ultimately, I have my bread and butter has been in crisis work, which is HIV prevention as well as suicide and homicide prevention.
Wow. Let me ask you something. With everything happening with the pandemic, have you seen an increase in the outcry for help in the area of mental health, specifically as it relates to suicide intervention?
Absolutely. Suicide has always been an issue. It's not a new topic. It's not something that just sprung up on us. It's just that the pandemic has caused a lot of different intricate difficulties for individuals who already suffer from mental health disorders. So in the past, pre-COVID, individuals who seek treatment for mental health had treatment plans. They had ways that they cope with their mental health symptoms, so whether that be, spending time with family, able to go skating, able to go take a walk in the park, able to go to the gym, all these different things that they are tools they had in place to help manage symptoms of depression or anxiety or different issues that they may have had. When COVID hit, everything shut down. As we know, the world shut down, not just the United States. And we were not able to do anything. We're on lockdown. So those individuals, on top of not being able to see their doctor, so I mean they're not having a timely time frame of getting medication, if that's incorporated in the treatment plan, right? So they can't get that on time. They can't use these outlets. They don't have the tools that they need. So what happens? It intensifies the symptoms. So we see an increase in calls. We see an increase in hospitalizations. Um, you know, I discuss with patients all the time, this is not something that you can do alone. It's okay to seek for help, because if you knew better, you do better. If you knew the tools, if you knew what you needed to help you work through this situation or work through these disorders, you would be able to do it. So COVID definitely put pressure on that. And even the individuals who were against therapy, they're against, seeking help. It's a big stigma against, reaching out for this type of help, let alone suicide, right? Just the mental health piece is a stigma. So I'm calling or going in for suicide is a big no-no. So with COVID, it had forced people to kind of come to terms with, okay, I need some help, or their family members reaching out to people like myself. I don't know what to do. Something's going on. So it definitely created pressures, unwanted or people weren't ready for what was going to happen. Think about people that don't suffer from mental health. It was hard on us, to be on lockdown and not be able to go and see family members. And Bernadette, I know this is a long-winded answer, but it's just so many aspects of it. Just how some people, family, you're dealing with death, unexpected death with COVID. We talked about, how some people, if it wasn't COVID, would still be here today. And that's the sad part. And they're hospitalized and no one can go see them. No one can talk to them. They can't feel physical touch from a loved one while they're sick. We are grateful and thankful for our healthcare workers, but they're strangers. You need them, but they're not your mom. They're not your sister. They're not a best friend or something like that. So all those things have caused a definite increase in suicidal and homicidal risk. And I'm glad you mentioned the tie between homicide and suicide. Although they are different, there is a connection to both of those.
Amen. It's interesting as you were talking, it's so many factors that we don't pay attention to, like the things that are happening behind the scenes, right? Because every day we're looking on the news and we see all the numbers going up for COVID and that people are paying attention to what's happening with the economy. But behind the scenes, there's a disruptive force taking place that's caused by the pandemic, and it's about our lives. And so when I looked at the statistics about these 18 to 24-year-olds, I was like, what is going on with our youth? Talk to us a little bit about that, and talk to us about what we should be paying attention to, because, as parents, sometimes we can get in that mode where we're like, oh, they're just being kids. You know what I mean? Or we don't even know what to look for, or we're in crisis ourselves, because of what's going on with the COVID. So we can't see past, the fact that, here I am and they've shut down the schools and I work in a blue collar job. I can't zoom into my job because I got to be the one to go in and clean the building. So I can't go to work and I can't stay here with the kids and do the stuff with them. And so it's all this increased pressure, right? So talk to us a little bit about what's happening with our youth.
Well, what's a big thing pre-COVID, in terms of suicide, that's what I'm working in currently. We would get calls about breakups, oh, my best friend don't want to talk to me. We're not friends anymore. So it was a lot of, I don't want to live around relationship things. That's still an issue, but now there's a lot of social anxiety. Now, the young ones have not been able to be in school, during high school and early adulthood. There's a lot of development and there's a lot of finding out who you are as an individual, trying to connect with other young individuals. You have all these monumental times: graduation, college, getting your first car, dating your first boyfriend or girlfriend, vice versa, things of that nature. So with COVID, crunching down on all of that, everyone has been at home, not interacting, right?
Mhm.
You're doing everything virtually. As an adolescent, socialization is big.
Mhm.
When we were in school, you had sports, you're a cheerleader, you at the football game, you're going to the party on Friday, it's a lot of social things going on and all that's cut. So what has been happening is there's been depression around that. They're
Mhm.
getting depressed just like the adults, right? And another big thing we've noticed we have to keep in mind, every household isn't healthy. There are a lot of abusive households. So for a lot of our educators, they worry about certain families where it's abuse kind of going on. And now they're there all day in this abusive environment. They don't have the getaway where they go to school for 4 or 5, 6 hours where they
Yeah.
get their only meals that they're going to have for that day. That's all they're eating, breakfast and lunch, and they're waiting for the next day to get more. So, on top of all of that, it's social anxiety with the threat. Now, things are kind of slowly looking better, and some of the schools have opened up, and there's been a lot of depression where kids and adolescents are having anxiety attacks. Being at home from a year, doing everything virtual and not really interacting with friends, feeling this awkwardness, not
Mhm.
knowing who's be there. They're having all of these issues. And as adults, we're not thinking, too much. And they're like, oh, just go to school. It's school. But we have to remember we were once there. Remember how you felt going to high school from junior high. If you had the transition from 8th grade to 9th grade, you were nervous about the first day of school. A lot of
Mhm.
times we're nervous about the first day of any new year, especially if it's a new school. So imagine being on lockdown and I think just some of the things that they have been dealing with is depression and anxiety. And ironically, it's not really around worried about catching COVID. It's
Mhm.
all the social things in regards to friends and not knowing what to expect and being nervous because they have gotten acclimated to be home. And it's weird because everyone's ready to get out, but then when it's time to get out to actually do it, it's all this anxiety that erupts, right?
Oh.
So that's something that we've been seeing with the youth.
I felt that when you said that because it took me back to, kind of being a new kid in a new neighborhood in a new school. And you go and you're scared and you're like, God, what if nobody likes me? And, what if I can't make any friends? And then you finally make a couple of friends and then y'all are separated for a year or some change. Yeah, you might get online and do a couple of things together, but there's still this separation anxiety where you're like, well, I'm not sure if I'm still close to the group I used to eat lunch with because, maybe y'all didn't connect with one another. It's different. And isolation, it just becomes a huge problem. So just listening to you, I'm thinking we should pay attention too to whether or not these kids are isolating. So talk to us a little bit about some of the signs we should be looking at. And thank you so much just for this whole conversation. Thank you so much.
Yes. So two things I want to talk about as far as signs of depression and anxiety with youth. Some of it kind of runs together, but it's some significant differences. As far as depression, everyone has depression at some point. Circumstances life happens, and everybody has a level of feeling sad, feeling
Mhm.
disappointed, sometimes feeling fearful about something upcoming, possibly, or something that has happened that creates a sense of anxiety, anxiousness, or sadness. But when becomes something unhealthy is when there's long periods of isolation. If you see a huge change in your personality, your child, right? So if you
Right.
see a huge change in wanting to interact, having struggles with making decisions, all of a sudden you don't know anything. You knew last week, but this week you
Mhm.
don't have the idea about anything. All of a sudden there's a change in friends. Like there once was friends around there, then there's no friends around.
Mhm.
A point is definitely sleeping too much or not sleeping at all,
Okay.
right? There's like a happy medium. That's just like with any of us. Anything too much or too less is something to kind of like pay attention to. So definitely with the youth is isolation. And another big one, this goes for adults and adolescents, is increased use or interest in alcohol or drugs.
Mhm.
That's a big one. The youth, especially teens and younger adults, are escaping with marijuana, popping pills. For some reason, well, not for some reason, we know the reason, it makes them not have to worry about anything.
Right.
It takes it is an escape from reality a lot of times, but it makes things worse, of course, because the reality is still there when you come down, right? So, um, so
Yeah.
just those some warning signs. And again, if something happened, you talk to your child, you know the circumstances, you guys work through that. But if it's over a period of time and it's kind of like no rhyme or reason, you can't really put your finger on like what's going on. This is going on too long. Then it's time to reach out and start asking some questions, sit them down and talk to them. If that's not working, reach out to somebody like me or someone in the mental health field to say, just, can we
Mhm.
get an assessment to see what's going on? Because sometimes I know I discussed with you in a different conversation, Bernadette, there's a difference between clinically depressed,
Yes.
regular depression. And clinical depression needs help because that can turn to the next point if it goes far into suicide. Right. So I wanted to, if it's okay, I don't know if you're ready. I was going to talk
Please.
about warning signs about suicide. So people who are truly and honestly suicidal, do not be scared to talk to them about suicide. They're not fearful about talking about it. They're typically worried about how we're going to feel if they admit it, right?
Mhm.
So even though you're nervous, you will be nervous. I've had situations where my palms are sweating, like, oh my goodness, they're serious. But some things that are warning signs or indicators um, of this change is they're talking about and wanting to die or kill themselves. Like randomly talking about or thinking about ideas. And it might just be subliminally in a conversation, but you're noticing like, where are you talking about that? What do you mean? Looking for a way
Yeah.
when, if you feel like a loved one, a child or a friend is suicidal, it's okay to ask them, are you having negative thoughts and feelings about killing yourself? Don't say hurting or harming, because that can get into self-mutilation, that can get into self things where it's not death included. We're talking about something where you're looking for an ending of death, right? So are you
Right.
having of suicide or thoughts of killing yourself? I love you. I really want to know, let's talk about this. And if they say yes, you can ask, well, the next thing is you always want to know, some people think about it, but they
Mhm.
don't have a plan, right? Or they don't
Mhm.
have intentions. It's just something that they struggle with, which ties into mental health, right? So then the
Right.
next thing you say, well, do you have any intentions on acting out on these thoughts? And they'll say yes or no. If they say yes, you ask them, well, what is your plan? And they'll
Mhm.
tell you. Sometimes they'll say, well, I don't know yet. Or they'll say, I want to take pills, or I'm going to walk into traffic, or, you
Wow.
know, anything. I'm an overdose on my prescribed medication. And so then, you just ask, do they have a time and a date when they want to do that? When that happens, then you need to be calling someone like me, calling the suicide prevention line to get them care, or
Okay.
if they have a psychiatrist, getting them involved. But another thing is, of course, increased use of alcohol and drugs, acting anxious, agitated, or reckless with their behavior. Another big one is for people who are serious about it, they start preparing.
Mm.
Way personal, sentimental items, cleaning the house, getting rid of property, trying to sell cars, jewelry, things of that nature. And you're like, what are you doing? And they might blow it off, but they're trying to prepare because they always feel like they're a burden on their loved ones. So they're trying to prepare and get everything together. So when they do it, you don't have nothing to worry about in their mind. Right. So that's a big one. If they start giving away stuff, um, of course, withdrawing, isolating, having feelings of revenge.
Mm.
They're angry, they have rage, they're talking about seeking revenge, and they're ex- displaying extreme cases of mood swings. So
Mhm.
that when it ties into the homicidal thing, like the murder suicide type thing. And I'll give an example of a patient that I had who was in the risk of that, was upset about a relationship, and was going to go and murder the female and then murder himself because he
Mm.
can't live with, first of all, he's upset about it ending, and then he can't live with the fact of what he did, so then he's going to kill himself. So
Mm.
just rage, that's how homicide ties into that. Or they get so angry. A lot of, I will speak on our veterans, that's a big group that deals with suicide. Like all of us know that that's known that veterans deal with suicide, and a lot
Mhm.
of it is not having access to care, having chronic pain. So sometimes it's not always mental health or a relationship. They can have chronic pain. We have a lot of airmen back in the 80s jumping out of airplanes. Now they have back issues, have back surgery. The country cut off Oxycontins and,
Yeah.
opioids. So
Yes.
when they get relief from that, they no longer can get relief. So they're in pain 24/7 and they want to die. So then they have suicidal thoughts. So you're dealing with that too. But before you chime in, it's some other risk factors. This doesn't mean that they're going to commit suicide. These are some things that it doesn't cause it or predict it, but it's just some characteristics to keep looking, having on your radar.
Yes.
If a previous attempt, there's a history of it, right? There's if family history, if there's a recent job or financial loss that's unbearable, right? Of course, relationship loss, whether that's due to divorce, death, something like that, lack of social support, or sense of, no family, no friends, just alone. That's a big one. So that's outside of isolation. You're not trying to isolate. You're just isolated because you don't have a choice. It's not by choice, right? Again, like I said, major or physical chronic illness and exposures to others who's had suicide. If you're around it all the time, it's always on the news, it's all on social media. And that's a big one with our youth. Social media is big with them. People post everything on social media, videos that are inappropriate. So if it's oversaturated, making it in their mind normal, and it's not. Just wanted to share, those are some warning signs, some risk factors to look at. Again, a lot of these things, somebody can have one or two. That doesn't mean they're suicidal or depressed, but it gets to duration, how long and how frequent it's happening. If it's happening too long and too frequently, then seek out some care.
Dr. Gardner, this has been amazing because you gave us clues to watch, right? Because you can talk to people and you'll be like, "You doing okay?" And they'll be like, "Oh, I'm fine." Right? But they're
Right.
exhibiting all of the signs that they're not fine. And that's why you asked, "Are you doing okay?" So you gave us the questions to ask to dig deeper. Don't just, if you see something that's worrying you, ask the questions, and we can't be afraid to ask the questions, right? Because their lives are at stake. And it's so funny because I think about when we grew up, this wasn't an issue because it wasn't an issue we talked about, because we don't deal with those mental health issues. That's something they do. We don't do that. And,
right.
As we grow older and we start to pay attention to what's going on, that's actually harming us.
Exactly.
Because if I look at like some of my white friends, they'll be like, "Oh, I'm going to see my therapist. I'm going to see my counselor. My psychologist said this." And it's a regular conversation because there's an understanding that mental health plays a role in our lives. And so they're concerned about their mental wellness and able to talk to people and able to overcome it. But I'll be honest with you, the way we grew up, or at least in the African-American community I grew up in, it was taboo. It was something you didn't do. It was something you didn't say. And I don't know if it was a fear of, "Oh, they're going to judge us. We're already down here. We're going to lose our jobs. And we just don't do that, or we have to appear so strong." But the cry for help is real. So you telling us what to look for and what to do, it could save someone's life. And we can no longer be afraid of it because the numbers speak for themselves, Dr. Gardner.
Absolutely. And I will say, in terms of cultural aspects and diversity in the African American community, and I will say brown and Black communities, it has always been stigma, no, those things are private. We don't talk about those things. You got the uncle that don't come out the room. Nobody talks about that. You know what I mean? So, but I will say during COVID, that kind of started changing. I don't think that we are as involved as much as our white counterparts, but there has been an increase. And I will say about the brown and Black community, it has gotten really real. Like you said, you cannot deny it. And it's gotten to the point where I can say, because I'm part of this culture, I feel comfortable with saying, I've noticed with us that I see us coming in when the last effort, when everything is exhausted in their own power and they're just coming because they don't know what else to do. And I would just like for us to get to the point of coming before it gets to that, because there's help and you don't have to wait till it gets to rock bottom, right? And you're just down and out, and you're just having suicidal thoughts now, or you're having all these negative feelings, when if you would have came a little earlier, we could have worked through that. And something I want to share with everyone on this event today is that in my experience in working with suicide, people who were genuinely suicide, I've always asked them, well, what is causing these thoughts? You know, what is triggering your mind to say, I don't want to live, right? Like, I don't want to be on this earth, you know, because my thing is, no one has ever came back from the dead and say, hey, when you come over here, it's cool. We don't know. We have faith. We believe in what we believe, but no one has came from the grave and said, this is what's happening when you die, right? So what is so bad that you're willing to just want to make something, such a final decision, right? And they have always said it's something in regards to family, children, spouse, work, school, sickness, or something. It has never, I mean, maybe 10% of the time, it's been something about, I hate myself. I hate the woman that I am. I don't like the father that I'm being. I'm just this horrible person. It's always typically outside extenuating circumstances. So I always ask people, well, if it's these things, you have told me nothing about you. You've told me about circumstances and situations. So why would you want to remove yourself for these outside things? And they say, I never thought about it like that. So as far as parents and kids, we can't remove them. So the things that we can remove, let's see how we can remove those, learn how to say no, make appropriate boundaries, all of that. But for the people we can't remove, how do we cope with them? How do we manage that, right? So then we get into planning together, because I tell them, you are the expert on your life. I didn't live your life. I didn't walk your shoes, but I'm the expert on mental health. We become a team, a partnership, right? And we work together and we work this out, because you not wanting to live when I have this rapport. Of course, I don't say this first time. It's not acceptable. I say that when I become familiar with you and we have a work relationship. So I just say that a lot of times. So please, you guys, do not be fearful of asking these hard questions, because at the end of the day, I'd rather for your loved one or my loved one to be safe and mad at me than gone. And I wish I would have said something.
Oh gosh, that part. So good. So good. The callers are just chatting away. They're really enjoying this topic and the clues that you're giving all of us on what to look for. So our time has come, unfortunately, to an end, but I want to make sure that if there's anything that you want to add to the conversation, that you feel like we need to know in this season, we are all ears. You have been a fantastic guest, and this is a super important topic, especially in this season. So is there anything that you want to leave us with?
Just know that if or your loved one is suffering from mental health or any disorders, just understand, always encourage yourself and others that that is not you. That is something that you deal with. That is a symptom. Just like if you catch a cold, I am not the flu. I have flu symptoms, right? So if you have depression, depression is not who you are. You are a mother, you are a father, you are an auntie, you are a doctor, you are all these other things, but you are not a depressed individual. Depression is something you deal with. Anxiety is something you deal with. Racing thoughts are something that you deal with and you are working through. Do not let that define you. It's just a symptom. So just know that. Stay encouraged, be blessed, and keep your head up. COVID is almost over. We made it this far, so we're going to be okay.
Oh, that is so good. Thank you so much. And I'm just thinking about to ask you. So I think there's probably a lot of resources out there for people to be able to call intervention hotlines. In this season, I read an article that there's actually been an increase in the number of crisis hotlines that have popped up. So the resources are definitely there. Is that correct, Dr. Gardner?
Correct. And the the National Suicide Prevention Line, that's who I work with. I'm on the federal side with the VA, but it's a national number. Anywhere in the United States, out the country, you call it. I'll give you the number. If you press once you get through, you press 1. It's for veterans, but if you just stay on the line, it's just the local line. They'll transfer you to someone locally to the local line. So that number is, if anyone wants it, it's 1-888-8275-8255.
Hey, one more time, and I'm gonna put it on the screen.
888-275-8255.
8255.
And if you Google suicide prevention, we're the first number that pops up. And so, when people advertise on the Grammys, on MTV Awards, it goes crazy.
Wow. Okay, guys. So there is the number. Thank you so much, Dr. Gardner, for not only just talking to us about the realities of what's been happening behind the scenes through COVID, with homicide, with suicide, with anxiety, with depression, but also giving us some tools that we can use in our own families and in our own workplaces to be able to identify when someone might be at risk, or when we ourselves, let's not count ourselves out,
Yes.
might even be a risk. Be like, oh, I've been sleeping a lot lately. We got to even start paying attention to our own behaviors, right?
A little
Yep.
bit more than you
Yeah. Right. So like, wait a minute, that sounds like me. I might need to call Cherie after the call. So, so we really appreciate you. We thank you, and God bless you. And thank you so much.
No problem. Anytime. I enjoyed it.
Okay. Thank you so much. So you guys, I am so just thrilled at all the information we're able to get from that conversation. It sounds like you guys were helped too by this conversation based on your chat. So thank you guys so much for tuning into that part. And we are to that part of the segment that a lot of us wait for, and that is the Be Blessed segment of the call. You guys know Unfiltered announced that we are committed to giving away cold, hard cash in this season. We give away money every single week, a minimum of $100, maybe even more. Just because it's a call on our life to give, and because we're in a season where people just want to receive a win. So we're about to get into our giveaway. But first, I have an announcement about last week's winner. Last week's winner was Alona Epps Collins. And interestingly enough, the number was 11. She guessed the number on the head. I later found out, talking to her yesterday, that she guessed the number 11, or chose the number 11, because that is her son's jersey number, and he plays baseball. So you guys see this picture of the baseball team over here. Within a few hours of her receiving her $100 gift, the baseball team sent out a message that they needed $90 more to go towards the food, because they had ran out of food for their different events, and she immediately sent that money over. So that was amazing. Wanted to tell you guys that testimonial about what happened on Be Blessed. So, be a blessing. You can bless someone else. So you guys, we are about to get into it. This week's sponsor is none other than our very own Dr. K. Guys, she is the founder of Freedom by Design. Please, please, please. Two things. You have to buy her book. Her book, Exposed, is absolutely amazing. It's absolutely insightful. And I haven't talked to anyone who did not connect with a part of that book. There are keys in there to break chains. Please support her by getting her book. But more importantly than that, follow her. She has a Monday, Wednesday, Friday live that she does on Facebook. Go ahead and follow her at Freedom by Design. Go to Freedom by Design 1. You'll get all of her links. And you guys, of course, will see the links there. Like and subscribe to her YouTube channel while you're at it. So guys, you know how we do this, and we're about to start the timer and start the music for the giveaway. So here we go, guys. Go ahead and put your numbers up, 1 through 100, and I will be writing down what that number is right now. All right, guys, write your numbers in the chat now. There's no one I can turn to. And I know all the feelings that we shared out in the past. And I know. All right, I see those numbers coming in, guys. I got you, doctor. All right, I see you guys. We got about 15 more seconds to get those numbers up. All right, here we go, here we go, here we go. All right, so listen, guys. Somebody said, can we pick more than one number? No, Rutho, you cannot pick more than one number. So you guys will help me out and scroll through the chat. The number is actually 54. So y'all tell me who is closest to number 54. Y'all will have to help me out. And I'm scrolling through the chat. I can see on YouTube and Facebook some of the different chats that were coming in. And we don't have anyone directly on the head. I see Tish came in at 44. I see anyone think, 59. It looks like Jackie Lynn Gardner McCoy is at 59. All right, it looks like she might be the closest. You guys help me out. Going once, going twice. It looks like the closest to 54 is going to be 59. Speak Up Now or Forever Hold Your Peace is going to be 59. And so here we go, right here. It looks like our winner for today is Jackie Lynn Gardner McCoy. Wait a minute, that sounds like a relative. Oh my goodness, the family of Dr. Cherie Gardner did win today. So you guys congratulate her in the chat. Congratulations. Please get your information over to, that is so funny. Get your information over to me or Katrina with Freedom by Design so that we can make sure that we can get that money for you today. And of course, I'm on Instagram and on Facebook. You guys can send me a message or you can send me a text message as well. So you guys, I'm excited about that. So whoop, whoop. So guys, here we go. We are closing out today's broadcast, of course. We always end our conversation, with this idea of staying woke. And what it means to be woke is just to be paying attention to what's really happening in the world. And I was thinking about the conversation that we just had with Dr. Cherie Gardner talking about depression and suicide. And I talked to her a little bit about this yesterday, and it was interesting, some of the reactions. I don't know how many of you all got to see the Meghan Markle interview where she talked about her depression and just how she was feeling and everything else. And some of the comments people put on there were brutal. It was, poor princess. It was, you're rich, you have no reason to be depressed. What are you complaining about? You're royalty. And some of the comments that people would write, I was like, wow. I wonder if they really understand it at all, because everyone operates from their own perspective, okay? Everyone's experience is different. If you guys remember Robin Williams, he was rich and he was funny and he was a comedian, but he was still depressed and he took his own life. Anybody ever heard of Kate Spade? It looked on the outside like she had everything going on, but she still took her own life. If you even think about people like Oprah, I was reading an article recently where Oprah was talking about her own bouts with depression, guys. She said that she first experienced depression after her film Beloved. You guys remember that film, Toni Morrison's Beloved. After that film, she said was her first bout with depression because someone from the studio called her and they said, oh, it's over. You got beat by Chucky. And she's like, who's Chucky? What do you mean I got beat by Chucky? And then she realized what had happened and that the movie had flopped. And that's when she plunged into depression and she started suppressing all of her feelings. And at that time, she said it was more than just, I'm sad. It was depression. It was different. Okay. And so when you think about people like that who've gone through it, the fact that she talked about it is amazing. She said, I want to say exactly how she said it. It's more than I feel bad about this. I felt like I was behind a veil. I felt like what many people had described on my show over the years, and I could never imagine it. I could never understand it. What's depression? Why don't you just pick yourself up? Until it hit her and she experienced it. Guys, depression doesn't have anyone can be attacked by it. Like suicide, anyone's family can be a victim of it. Homicide, many of our families have already been a victim of it. So it's time that we start paying attention to the mental health that's happening behind the scenes. COVID started destroying people's physical health, but the impact of COVID had an impact on financial health, mental health, all types of health in every single category. And we've got to start paying attention because if you look at the numbers, the greatest category that's at risk is our youth. I looked at an article last night and it brought me to tears because a 12-year-old boy took his life because he broke the TV and he was on punishment for breaking the TV. And he took his life because he couldn't get off punishment in time to play Fortnite with his friends. And that was his only outlet. That was his only connection to him. And he had so much anxiety about that. A 12-year-old. They might seem like small things to us, but they're big things to the kids. And so we have to start paying attention to the bigger picture. We have to start looking at the invisible signs because they're hidden in plain sight. So guys, next time we ask someone, are they fine? And they answer, let's make sure we're reading between the lines. I love you guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. And until next time, be blessed and stay woke.